What if your habits were slowly pulling you away from who you are? Not in some dramatic fall, but in quiet, daily erosion. We chase control out there, but forget that real power lives in here. Marcus Aurelius knew this. His meditations weren't written to teach others. They were his way of remembering that peace doesn't shout. It whispers, and only the still can hear it. These 5 habits, they didn't transform my life overnight, but they helped me remember the parts of myself I forgot in the noise. And it started with one question. What if stillness isn't a reward, but a discipline? Let's begin with the first one. We live in a world where silence feels unfamiliar, and stillness, it's almost suspicious. Every ping, scroll, and update pulls us outward. So much noise that we forget the sound of our own breath. But what if the answer isn't out there? What if it's buried under the distractions? Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations in solitude, not for applause, but to remind himself what truly mattered. I kept asking, why do I feel busy yet hollow? So I did something ordinary, not groundbreaking, not Instagram-worthy. I practiced 5 simple habits, quietly, for 1 week. Inspired by Marcus Aurelius Meditations, I didn't seek breakthrough. I sought return, and what I found wasn't more productivity, but more presence. This isn't a list of life hacks. It's a practice of remembering. Let's begin with the first habit, the one that helped me face the thing I kept avoiding: silence. We don't realize how loud the world is and end it until we finally turn it off. I set a simple rule: 1 hour of screen time per day outside of work. No endless reels, no background noise. At first, the silence was awkward, almost empty. But then I noticed something. Without distractions, I found boredom, and then I found myself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." I had been living with constant noise, not because I needed it, but because I feared what might rise in its absence. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. It grounded me, made room for thoughts I had buried. This wasn't digital detox. It was digital minimalism, not removing screens, but reclaiming my attention. The reward? A kind of inner clarity I didn't know I was missing. That clarity gave me space to focus on something I hadn't done in years. Most of us don't eat. We consume quickly, while scrolling, while working, while barely tasting a thing. But what if eating was a practice of presence? I chose 1 meal a day. No screen, no noise, just food and breath. The first time I tried it, it felt awkward, too quiet. But halfway through, something shifted. I tasted food I thought I knew. The texture, the warmth, the subtle sweetness I used to overlook. I realized I'd been missing my own life. Epictetus once said, "What is yours by nature is not lost by presence, but by distraction." That moment of mindful eating grounded me. It wasn't about dieting. It was about self-discipline, not to restrict, but to return. Gratitude rose naturally, not from effort, but from awareness. And with that sense of presence, I turned inward even further. Each night before sleep, I gave myself 10 minutes, not to write something profound, but something honest. I wrote what happened, what hurt, what I hoped. Some nights, it came easily. Other times, I just stared at the page. But slowly, something strange happened. The words felt like advice to myself, from myself. I didn't realize I was doing what Marcus Aurelius did. His meditations were never meant for an audience. They were reminders, written in solitude, to stay aligned when life pulled him off course. Through journaling, I began to witness my patterns. I stopped reacting, started reflecting. There's power in emotional reflection, not because it changes what happened, but because it changes how we carry it. And owning my story, even the quiet parts, gave me clarity I didn't expect. Mind and spirit felt aligned. But what about the body? Now, it was time to move. I used to think movement had to mean intensity, sweat, burn, push harder. But that was ego, not presence. What I needed was space, not punishment, just motion. So I moved, gently, stretching, walking, light yoga at sunrise. Every gesture felt like a quiet check-in, a way to listen instead of force. The shift was subtle, but powerful. More than energy, I felt integration. The body was no longer a tool to control. It was part of the conversation. Seneca once said, "A sound mind in a sound body." That is a short but full description of a happy state in this world. This habit gave me physical clarity, a reset not just of posture but of perspective. It wasn't about fitness. It was about stillness, in motion. And then came the habit that changed how I met the world each morning. Before the world demands anything from you, there's a window, a space, a silence. That's where I began. I started waking up just 1 hour earlier. No phone, no checklist, just breath, light, intention. At first it felt unnatural. Why trade sleep for silence? But then I saw it. The sky slowly opening. The world unfolding without urgency. I watched the world wake up and remembered I don't need to rush to catch it. Marcus Aurelius said, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." These quiet Stoic mornings gave me something rare. Not control over the day, but control over how I entered it. And that was enough. One small ritual, one soft hour, a return to intentional living. And when I strung all 5 habits together, what emerged wasn't a new identity, but a remembered one. These 5 habits, they were never the destination. They were reminders. Marcus didn't write his meditations to impress others. He wrote them to return to himself. And maybe that's what we need more than change. A quiet return, a daily practice, a moment of self-discipline, a small act of emotional resilience that says, "I'm still here, and I remember who I am." What if this wasn't the beginning of a transformation, but the end of forgetting? Which habit spoke loudest in silence for you? Leave it in the comments. I'll meet you there.